What's up? It's Cody from the Keepers of Nerdom. How y'all doing? Let's talk a little bit about today, Lokhust Heavy Destroyers versus the Lokhust Destroyers. These are two models that are very much hand in hand, and you'll see why here in a little bit. But I think this is a fascinating example of great design in the Necron's 40K Codex. So first off, I just want to show you a quick example of my handiwork that I've gotten to do over the course of painting. This is from a previous video, but I thought it would be fun to show you all that this is my Lokhust Heavy Destroyer, one of the two that I've got so far, and I think I'm going to be doing some sort of printing as well of some Lokhust Destroyers, or at least some proxy for it for now. And as you can see, I've went with a very different color scheme than what is shown and examples, and I just had an idea, and you'll even notice actually I switched the plates on his engines, like above his engines, to a different thing. So let's talk a little bit through what this looks like as far as, oh, we can't go to the next one, that's all right. So let's talk a little bit about the stats of both of these. So first off, the Lokhust Destroyers. And you'll notice something right away that up in the top left, it's 1 to 6 Lokhust Destroyers and 0 to 1 Lokhust Heavy Destroyers. So you can actually hide a Lokhust Heavy Destroyer inside of this group. And there's some interesting pieces here. As far as stats, they both move 8 inches. They both cost now 40 points. And with a little bit of a difference here, because actually the guns for the Lokhust Heavy Destroyer actually make them go up by 5 points from everything I'm reading on these. Then their weapon skills and ballistic skills are 3+. You don't want them ever in melee because they actually are really bad. They don't have anything special there, okay? So just keep that in mind. The strength is 4, but we don't really care about that because strength of weapons has their own strengths, and trust me, they're fine. So toughness is 5. That 5 toughness versus a 4 is drastically different. And so you also have only 3 wounds on the Lokhust Destroyers, but 4 on the heavies. So the heavies do have an extra hit point, and they definitely, if from the first picture, look very much tougher than the other. They have 2 attacks each in close combat, but you don't want them in there ever. Their leadership is 10, and their save is 3 and ups. So their save basically means they have a decent save, but it's pretty easy to get through it with some heavier weapons. So if we go down to the weapons, first off, before that, a Lokhust Destroyer is equipped with a Gauss Cannon, the middle weapon, and the Lokhust Heavy Destroyer is equipped with a Gauss Destructor, the bottom weapon, but they can actually have the Enmitic Exterminator, and I think only the heavies can have those top and bottom weapons. And so otherwise, if you're a Lokhust Destroyer, you only can get the Gauss Cannon. And so let's just run through these really quickly. The Enmitic Exterminator is 36-inch range, so it's a massive range. It has heavy 3d3, so minimum 3, potentially 9 shots per model. Strength 7, only 1 AP, 1 damage. The blast keyword, which can change just how it functions as far as how many shots based on if you're firing into a group. So this is if you wanted to put on a massive gun in order to take out lots of smaller troops. So that's really cool, but it's also interesting because the Lokhust Destroyers actually have a better gun in some ways for doing that when it's going up against troops that are a little bit tougher, right? That are like Space Marines or above, that have smaller groups and are just tougher wise in their toughness, but also their wounds, things like that. So the Gauss Cannon is only 24 inches, and that's where it gets a little bit limited. It has heavy 3, so it does get 3 shots. Strength 6, so 1 less, but the AP is -3 and the damage is D3, so you could go from 1 to 3 damage. And I love that option because you could have 3 shots guaranteed of 3, and the other gun has a minimum of 3 up to 9, whereas this has at least just 3, but the damage can get pretty nasty, and it's going to have a higher odds of going through because of that -3 AP. But then the Gauss Destructor, 36 inches, heavy once. You only get 1 shot per model with this thing, but it's a strength 10, which is massive. AP -4, it's going to blast through anything until invulnerable save. And the damage is 3d3, so minimum 3 damage, maximum 9. This is for taking out vehicles and larger targets. Now, the abilities, Living Metal, they can heal every turn. The command protocols we can gain access to. They can reanimate, which is really kind of hard to do, except for the Lokhust Destroyers are much easier than the heavies just because of that 1 less wound. Hardwired for Destruction, they all share these. Each time a model in this unit makes an attack, reroll a hit roll of 1. So they do get to reroll ones, and right now they hit on 3s and up. So if you can ever get like an Overlord on there to make them 2 up to hit, then that 1 is really easy to roll away and not ever miss with their attack roll. And repulsor platform, models in this unit do not suffer the penalty to hit rolls incurred for firing heavy weapons the same turn that their unit has moved. So they go around the heavy restrictions as they're not a vehicle. And so their keywords are infantry, core, fly, destroyer, cult, locust, heavy destroyers. So they're core now, which is fantastic. They get so many more benefits. This is just the locust heavy destroyer if you just look at it, because you'll notice they could be in their own model set as well, and up to 3 of them in that, with 50 points each, whereas in here it looks like at least 40 points with, I believe you'd have to add an extra 5 points on for their Gauss Destructor, so really it's 45. So, that's kind of just interesting, because I don't think that the smaller Locust Destroyers can put those guns onto them. So you can get a free 5 points, essentially, by hiding one inside of the other set, which is really cool. It's a neat thing, but then with this, you could actually have a heavy squad that's destroying vehicles. So it's just a question of what you want to do. I included the Technomancer here just to talk a little bit about him, because he's so useful in keeping nearby. Just for example, his war gear down here of Canoptic Cloak, 10 inches and the fly keyword, that's not why we're having him in here. He can repair 1 friendly dynasty model within 3 inches of the model. That model regains up to D3 lost wounds. Each model can only be repaired once per turn, so he can heal them. But also, if you go down to abilities, the Rites of Reanimation on the far right. In your command phase, you can select 1 friendly Dynasty core unit within 6 inches of this model. 1 destroyed model from that unit is reanimated. If the selected unit is a Necron Warriors unit, D3 are reanimated instead. And you can only select for this ability once per phase each unit, because he can do it a second time with Stratagem. Really cool. And this can allow you to resurrect these massively awesome, powerful guns and keep them firing. And, even if you resurrect just 2 or 3, this is worth its weight in gold, because the Technomancer is just so useful all around. And so I love taking the Technomancer, but really taking him with these guys is just fantastic. So some standout stratagems for the Locust Heavy Destroyers and Locust Destroyers are the Techno Oracular targeting for 1 CP, and you use it in your shooting phase before making the wound roll for an attack made by a Necron's model for your army. Do not make a wound roll for that attack, it automatically wounds the target. So you'd want to use this on the heavies more so, all right, because you want that shot to hit and wound, right? You want to make sure, and when you can get them down to a 2+ to hit and they reroll 1s, they're probably going to hit, right? And then make sure they just wound, because you want that 3d3 going through if at all possible. That's a massive hit, because even if just minimum 3 damage, that's still something, and maximum 9, you can decimate something pretty heavily and get them down to a lower bracket of their stats. Extermination protocols, this is 2 CP, so you got to be careful with this. This is expensive. Use the stratagem in your shooting phase when a Locust Destroyers or Locust Heavy Destroyers unit from your army is selected to shoot. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, you can reroll the wound roll. So this is both more powerful and less powerful than the other one, because it allows your entire unit to redo it and redo the wound roll. This wouldn't work against things like Void Armor, because they won't let you reroll wound rolls. But in any other situation, typically this would be in a way kind of better, because especially, so say you have the 3 Locust Heavy Destroyers, then they have to reroll all you could reroll all 3 and make sure that they all hit, versus the top one only guaranteeing 1 go through and the other 2 just stand on their own, right? So that's just the interesting thing, that this allows a reroll for all around. It's risky though, because it's 2 CPs, but if you did this for a Locust Destroyers with a Locust Heavy in the middle of it, that's a lot of wound rolls to be able to reroll. Pretty cool. So which is really better? We've already run through most of this stuff. The max cost for a Heavy Destroyers is 150 points. Feel free to pause on this and talk through it yourself. The max cost for the Destroyers, when you max it out with 6 plus the Heavy, is 285. It's much bigger, but you also have a lot more guns going, and they have a different function, whereas the Heavies are just for taking out vehicles, and the Destroyers could be, your smaller guns targeting a squad of something, and then your bigger gun, your Heavy, targeting a vehicle as well, so you could actually do things, which is really cool. So both have some very, very cool things, and my conclusion for this that I would love for you to just think about and let me know in the comments below is this, that they're both amazing for different things, right? The Locust Destroyers are fantastic just for giving so much damage out to squads, whereas the heavies are for big targets. And I would almost recommend taking potentially sometimes both and experimenting with both and hiding even a heavy inside the smaller destroyers, right? They're a bigger squad, but they cost less. And, well, they don't cost less after you max them all out, but keep healing them up with a Technomancer and get an Overlord there to give them that +1 to hit. So really, which one's better? I think they both have their roles and they're very, very different. So let me know down in the comments below which one you find is the best, which one you enjoy using the most. I've been Cody from the Keepers of Nerddom. Take care.